Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good afternoon to all participants in Malaysia and other parts of the world. Thank you for joining us on this very special occasion. It is our first virtual ambassadorial lecture. So we'd like to thank His Excellency Dr. Emir Hadzikadunic, the Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina to Malaysia, for kindly accepting our invitation. So once again, thank you, Ambassador. All right, so with us this afternoon, we have the Honorable Your Excellency Dr. Emir as our speaker today, and also the Vice Chancellor of University Technology Mara, Emeritus Professor Dato' Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Azrai Kasim, here to do his welcoming remarks. So before I pass this over to Dato', Yang Berbahagia Dato', and also to our speaker, I would like to just share very quickly what to expect for the lecture. All right. So as scheduled, we are on all the way, hopefully, to 5 p.m. And very quickly, we appreciate your patience that we will start. So the scene setting will be like very fast here, that you will be again entertained by a very informative video that Ambassador will be showing with us, right? The breakout of Yugoslavia, a very interesting history, I think very balanced. And the video is going to take about a while, about 16 minutes plus and minus. So we hope our audience will be very patient and enjoy the video. And I think it's going to be a very interesting lecture today. So with that, with us, we have the Honorable Vice Chancellor of University Technology Mara, Emeritus Professor Dato' Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Azrai Kasim. So Dato', the screen is all yours for Dato' to actually say a few words of welcoming the opening remarks for the event.
Thank you, Dr. Zainab. The Honorable Dr. Emir Hadzikadunic, Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina to Malaysia, the Ambassador Dr. Zainab Muhammad Noor, Director, Office of International Affairs, UITM, the management team from UITM, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to everyone. I'm happy to be here today to join you for the second lecture in the Ambassadorial Lecture Series organized by the Office of International Affairs, UITM. It is a real delight to see so many of you here taking part in today's program while adopting the new normal following the Recovery Movement Control Order, or RMCO, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The current crisis we find ourselves in is unparalleled in its scale in modern history. And as we start to adjust to this new normal, we know that there will be new opportunities to rethink how things can be done, despite the disruptions and challenges that we face. Yet let us not forget the lessons from the past to help us forge ahead better and stronger. As we listen to His Excellency Dr. Emir Hadzikadunic talks in just a while, we should keep an open mind in understanding the impact of war atrocities on humanity. After all, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. To briefly recap, Malaysia was involved in the United Nations peacekeeping operations and had called upon the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, in 1995 to set up measures and help the newly independent Bosnia and Herzegovina. Since then, both countries have developed positive bilateral relations in trade, especially in the agriculture and halal sectors, besides helping to establish 3 Malaysian Islamic banks in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your Excellency, moving forward to more recent times, just last September, I had the pleasure of visiting the second Sarajevo Halal Fair at the Skanderija Center in the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was made to understand that Your Excellency was instrumental in the participation of Malaysian businesses and academic community, which UiTM was part of for the very first time. Thank you, Your Excellency, for making this possible. As a result from that visit, we were able to promote our academic programs, introduce Islamic and halal-based programs from various faculties and centers of excellence at UiTM, especially our Accounting Research Institute, or ARI, and also establish networking opportunities during the event. For your information, several academic visits were made during the trip to enhance UiTM's international network, which resulted in 3 successful signings of Memorandum of Understanding with the University of Sarajevo of Science and Technology, USST, International University of Sarajevo, IUS, and University of Sarajevo, UNSA. During the visit, important topics were discussed and planned then between UiTM and the universities, including exchange programs for students and staff, joint research projects, particularly in the field of medicine and computer science and information systems, as well as the possibility of jointly organizing conferences, symposium, congresses, seminars, and courses. Ladies and gentlemen, this effort marked a positive step towards further collaboration between UiTM and these universities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to develop strong partnerships and academic collaborations which UiTM hopes to execute and pursue as planned despite the COVID-19 global pandemic. We have to be bold in our new normal approach. Global education is the trend. We need to prepare our graduates with the rapid advances in technology and at the same time meet new challenges. I believe this is the time to develop sustainable programs and impactful activities to further enhance UiTM's presence in the global arena. Education offers hope for humanity. It is a game changer. The uncertain future can be secured through the values that are infused in education. Therefore, it is pertinent to sustain global partnerships between UiTM and universities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to further flourish relations in education between the 2 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I certainly hope UiTM and new partner universities have the possibilities of establishing cooperation between universities in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Malaysia. Let us forge stronger ties in the future. Understanding our strengths, our similarities and differences too will pave the path to more informed decisions to be made to achieve our educational goals. A sound comprehension of a country's culture, economy, policies, and politics is imperative for successful educational linkages. Certainly, this will lead UiTM in the direction of a better future through forward-thinking and innovative approaches in education, together with our new partners from Bosnia and Herzegovina. With that, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I hope everyone will be engaged in the lecture given. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia Professor Emeritus Dr. Emir Nasim, the Vice Chancellor of UiTM, for your very nice welcoming remarks. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I take the opportunity to do justice to His Excellency Dr. Emir, to very briefly introduce him. As we know, His Excellency Dr. Emir Hadzikadunic is the Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina to Malaysia. He holds a PhD in International Relations from the International University of Sarajevo. His extensive experience in international relations and foreign policy includes professional service as Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina to the Islamic Republic of Iran from 2010 to 2013, and Malaysia, of course, 2016 to today, ongoing. Ambassador also busy lecturing and guest lecturing at the International University of Sarajevo and other universities in Southeast Europe, Malaysia, and Singapore. Ambassador has written for academic journals and media outlets, authored several books, and co-authored other publications. So throughout his professional career, he has also conducted consultancy work for European Union, the United Nations Development Programme, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and of course the United States Agency for International Development during their peace building missions in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a virtual clap for the ambassador. So, ambassador, the screen is all yours, and please, everyone, enjoy the presentation from ambassador.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, it is my great honor to give this lecture at UITM. I thank Emeritus Professor Dr. Azrai Kasim, Vice Chancellor of UITM, for his opening remarks, as well as Dr. Zeynep Noor, Director of the Office of International Affairs, for extending a kind invitation from UITM to speak today about post-genocide Bosnia and Herzegovina. Well, my lecture has two parts. In the introductory part, I want to share with you some insights about Bosnia and Herzegovina. First, its historical background. Second, its current political structure. And then third, its geopolitical realities, so that you may have a better understanding of our political priorities, our challenges, and our complexities. In other words, who we are, where we are, and what we are today. Then in my second part of my lecture today, I will briefly start with defining the concept of peace and peace building, and then more specifically talk about post-war recovery of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is about the Dayton Peace Agreement that stopped the war in Bosnia in 1995, and different tools that were employed by the international community to transform the country from a crisis situation to a functional and peaceful state. Within this second part and the main part of my lecture, I will actually discuss how this peace treaty has evolved, progressed, and advanced in the last 25 years. What has been achieved so far, for example, whether that transformation was successful or not. And I will finish my presentation with future perspective of a post-conflict state. However, we will first watch a short video. It is around 15-16 minutes. It might be a bit longer for the audience, but I tell you it's very factual and gives a wider context into the story that I'm going to share with you today. So let me share the video now, and then we can move on with my lecture. First of all, I share with you the story of my grandmother. It is also a story of contemporary Bosnian history. Well, my grandmother, she was born in 1907, and she has lived for 92 years in a small hometown. She survived 5 different countries. First one was Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Bosnia was a single political entity ruled by Austria from 1878 to 1918. Then my grandmother, she survived first Yugoslavia. Again, Bosnia was part of it from 1918 to 1941. And then she survived brief rule of independent state of Croatia, which was a puppet state of Nazi Germany during the Second World War. And then fourth, she survived communist Yugoslavia from 1945 to 1992. And then finally, she also lived in independent and democratic Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, what I want to tell by her story, she survived not only 5 different countries, but she also survived or lived under 5 different political systems, like the dual monarchy of Austria and Hungary, constitutional monarchy of First Yugoslavia, Nazi rule, communist rule of Second Yugoslavia, and then finally, democracy of Bosnia and Herzegovina. She also survived the First World War, Second World War, and the Bosnian War. And she died peacefully in 1999. What I want to tell by her story, I want to tell that the Bosnian history has been very dynamic, at some points very turbulent, but most of the time, however, it was peaceful and progressive. I just have 2 more slides on short history on Bosnia. On this slide, you see Habsburg, Herr Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was the son of Franz Joseph, an elderly emperor of Austrian Empire, while he was on his visit to Sarajevo in June 1914. Franz Ferdinand was next in line. He was supposed to be next emperor of Austrian Empire. However, this has never happened. One of these photos that you see on this slide was taken just seconds before his assassination took place in Sarajevo on June 28. So this is the slide of Franz Ferdinand I am talking about. And one of these pictures that you see now, it is just seconds before he was assassinated in Sarajevo on June 28. As you know, this incident in Sarajevo triggered a series of events in late July and early August that ended in a great war. I move on fast forward. This is illustration of the siege of Sarajevo, which was the longest siege of a capital in the history of a modern warfare that lasted for 1,425 days. This siege, this particular siege of Sarajevo, lasted 3 times longer than the Battle of Stalingrad, or more than a year longer than the siege of Leningrad. After the war, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICTY, they indicted and convicted top political and military leaders from Republika Srpska for crimes against humanity that were committed during the siege of Sarajevo, among other things that they have done. This includes famous figures like Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic, you probably heard about, who are now serving their life sentence in prison. Okay, so much about history. Now I talk about political structure of Bosnia. So what is Bosnia today? Most simple definition of our state structure is as follows. It is a single state with 2 entities, this is blue and red color that you see, 3 constituent people, Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, plus minorities. However, it is more complex story than this. One of these 2 entities is centralized, this is red color, Republika Srpska. Another one is more decentralized, with additional division into 10 cantons or subunits, different types of blue color, plus Brčko district, which is yellow color. So in conclusion of this part, I want to highlight that Bosnia has a complex state structure. It is very decentralized state. It has unique political system with very strong power sharing mechanisms at the state level, including collective and rotating presidency, veto power, and so on and so forth. Each entity in Bosnia and each canton in Federation of Bosnia has its own government, parliament, executive, legislative, and judicial power. And guess what? This is all functioning in last 25 years since the Dayton Peace Accord has been signed. So this structure is based upon a peace agreement. The post-war political order of Bosnia was not a product of choices of any winning party. It did not result by the victory on the battlefield of one side over the other. The post-war political order was a product of a negotiated settlement that we talk about today. I move on with the last introductory slide, which is about geopolitics. So this is a political map of the Balkan region of the Southeast Europe. You see former republics of ex-Yugoslavia, and you also see some other countries like Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova. Bosnian border with Croatia is also bordered with the EU, and border with Croatia and Montenegro is also bordered with North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. What is important to highlight on this slide? Well, all these countries, all these states, they share common values today. What are those values? Those are the values of plural democracy, multi-party system, and market economy. Remember, they were former communist or socialist states with no election, with single-party system and planned economy. In some cases, like Romania, Bulgaria, or Moldova, they were under the influence of the Soviet Union. In case of ex-Yugoslavia, as you know, it was part of the non-aligned movement. And finally, just very briefly, you see Bosnia on European map. As you can see, it is a relatively small country in Europe, which is, I would say, bigger than Belgium or smaller than Ireland, if we compare it with other European countries. If we compare it with some Malaysian states, I can say it is bigger than Pahang, for example, or smaller than Sabah. So Bosnia is in the Southeast Europe, in the Balkan region. It is also in the heart of Europe, close to any major EU capital. We also like to say it is a kind of bridge between East and West, not only because of our geography, but because of cultural, national, and religious diversity. Okay, so much about my introductory part. Now I move on to speak about peace building in Bosnia in the post-war time. First of all, let me define the concept of peace so that you have a better understanding of the peace building process. Peace can be defined as positive and negative. Positive peace is defined by three categories: by attitudes, by institutions, and structures, which create and sustain a peaceful society. In any post-conflict place, positive peace starts with the reconciliation of parties previously involved in a conflict and continues with the development of cooperation, promotion of equality, and fostering the culture of peace and dialogue. So in this regard, positive peace is a very ambitious project, very ambitious approach toward a lasting peace, and not easy to deliver. A negative peace is broadly understood as an absence of conflict, an absence of war, of violence, and it is a kind of minimalistic approach in defining peace. Okay, now let me also distinguish between three similar, in some cases overlapping, even contested concepts such as peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building. They're very similar, but they are very important to understand so that you get the full picture of what has happened in Bosnia. So peacekeeping, it is like keeping two opposing sides apart from each other. Third party that intervenes usually does not discuss underlying causes for their conflict. It can be successful. Peacekeeping can be successful, like the cases of Namibia, Cambodia, East Timor, Croatia, and so on and so forth. It can also be unsuccessful. Bosnia and Herzegovina is an example of a devastating peacekeeping failure with genocide that happened in the UN safe haven in Srebrenica in July 1995. Other unsuccessful examples happened in Somalia, Angola, Rwanda, and so on and so forth. So peacekeeping in Bosnia is what has happened before the 1995, what has happened during the wartime. I mentioned UN safe havens, and even them were not fully protected, and they resulted with genocide. So this peacekeeping mission of UN PROFOR from 1992 to 1995 failed. Now, second concept, peacemaking. Now we have a mediator which is discussing underlying causes this time around. How can truce be made? Official who mediates is usually a diplomat. It is about the peace treaty, it's about peace agreement or the accord that can be negotiated and finally signed. In our story, in my lecture story, it is about Dayton Peace Agreement. And finally, third concept, peace building. When? Well, one goes an extra mile. This time we talk about transformation of a post-war country. This process reflects various efforts in support of political, institutional, and social transformation necessary to bring about lasting peace. It can be led by international community, and it can be led by locals. So now you understand the difference between these three concepts, and you also understand that I largely talk about peace building. I talk about transformation that has evolved in Bosnia after 1995. So just to remind ourselves, the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia, which is better known as the Dayton Peace Agreement, was negotiated and drafted at a military base at Wright-Patterson Air Force near Dayton, United States of America, in November 1995. It was formally signed in Paris, and you see that ceremony on this slide, by leaders of Bosnia, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and Croatia on December 14, 1995. It was also, as you can see on this slide, witnessed by leaders of the US, France, Germany, United Kingdom, Spain, and Russia. In other words, this settlement in Bosnia was a product of a peace negotiation backed by the US mostly, but also involved other key international actors like the UN Security Council, key regional actors like Serbia and Croatia, and key local constituencies, representatives of the Bosnian government and other opposing groups. This particular agreement stopped the war that lasted for more than 3 years and resulted with genocide in Srebrenica that I mentioned already. So the Dayton Peace Agreement gave the chance for peace-building process in Bosnia. Another important remark on the Dayton Agreement is that it did not idealize Bosnia. It treated Bosnian state on its own terms by recognizing the fact that it has a distinct historical, political, and regional context. It also recognized opposing views, national and religious diversity, and troubled experience with neighbors. Okay, now I move on with my lecture and I discuss different tools that can be employed by the international community anywhere in the world to transform the country from a crisis situation, from a war-torn situation, to a peaceful and more functional state. So, as you can see on this slide, we are talking about different international constraints. These factors actually represent different international efforts to implement also Dayton Peace Agreement and consolidate a war-torn country. So, as you can see on this slide, transformation that I talk about can be supported with the presence of international military force with clearly defined peace-building mandate. Military force is expected to prevent violence and serves as a deterrent strategy. In other words, it separates opponents at the early stage of peace implementation and also discourages any adversary from prolonging the crisis. This kind of military missions, military engagement reflects the first generation of peace building or peacekeeping, because these two concepts are overlapping in this case. And then transformation of any country in a conflict or after the conflict can also be supported with non-military presence of relevant international or regional organizations. Such missions reflect multi-dimensional approach. It's not first generation, it's the second generation of peace-building processes. So these non-military missions primarily focus on civilian part of the settlement, of the agreement, of the peace treaty. Multi-dimensional approaches have become the model for contemporary peace promotions worldwide. They seek not only to prevent violence, but also to address the root causes of the conflict. They build, for example, local capacities, economic, judiciary, civil society, media, police, rule of law, for sustainable peace. And they also create space for progress and development. In case of post-Dayton Bosnia and Herzegovina, I want to highlight a multi-dimensional approach has been applied. Let me now speak more specifically about international military missions in Bosnia from 1995 to 2020, as you can see on this slide. Basically, I raised following questions. What was their mandate? What was their international mandate? What was their composition? And what was their nature and scope of activities? And most importantly, I discussed what was the outcome of these missions. First of all these three missions that you see on this slide, their mandate was defined initially by the Dayton Peace Agreement. Deployment of international military force was specified by Annex 1A of the agreement itself. Second, it was also authorized with relevant international decisions from the UN Security Council. Third, it was NATO-led force. Initially, the largest share was provided by NATO members such as the US, UK, and France, among whom the most powerful country in the world participated with the largest number of foreign troops. Fourth, it also included non-NATO members. For example, Malaysian troops under Malbat force there as well, Russia, Pakistan, Ukraine, Egypt, and others as well. In this regard, it was a unique peace building or peacekeeping force, and the first military mission of such kind after the World War II. Okay, these international military missions in Bosnia, they, as you can see again on this slide, pass through several phases, actually through three phases, reflecting the situation on the ground and different dimensions of peacemaking. First, the implementation force, IFOR, as you can see, was deployed from 1995 to 1997, with the duty of supporting immediate peace implementation and preventing any new conflict to re-emerge. IFOR also provided a distinctive experience of as NATO's first ever ground force operation, first ever deployment out of the area, and first ever joint operation with NATO's Partnership for Peace partners. Then international military presence moved to the second stage, called the stabilization phase, from 1997 to 2004. Again, authorization came from the UN Security Council, by which the stabilization force, or SFOR, was committed to continue the success of the previous year. So its mission was to prevent any threat to peace and security in Bosnia. It also allowed refugee return, trained and restructured armed forces in Bosnia, and at the same time it helped civilian authorities and other international agencies toward a common goal in which the peace process can continue to move forward. The slight difference between IFOR and SFOR actually corresponded to progress achieved in Bosnia, while the role of IFOR was to implement the peace in the immediate phase. The role of SFOR was to stabilize the country. And then the third and the last phase, from 2004 to 2020, SFOR was replaced by European Union Force Altea, EU4, as another military deployment. Again, it was mandated by the UN Security Council. This time, it was supposed to provide capacity building and training of the armed forces of Bosnia and supporting them in their progression towards NATO's standards. It was also expected to contribute to a safe and secure environment in Bosnia. Remember, now this minimalistic definition of peace which is an absence of hostilities. In this regard, these international military missions were successful to prevent any new hostility in the post-Dayton phase. Peace has been accepted by all locals, by all parties, and all these missions from IFOR, SFOR, and EUFOR were also gradually reducing their numbers. In Bosnia, their initial number of 60,000 strong force from late 1995 was reduced, for example, to 35,000 just 1 year later. By 2004, that number was reduced to 7,000 foreign troops. By 2012, it was below 1,000. And today, 2020, just a couple of hundred foreign troops are still present in Bosnia under the command of EU force. This was a clear indication of a steady success of the military implementation of the peace process. Now, let me highlight on other more important results and achievements of this peace process. So this includes disarmament. It was completely successful. Remember, during the wartime, there were hundreds of thousands of people under arms, and when the war ended, they were supposed to be disarmed. So as a result of these military missions, it was a successful process. Then necessary reduction of local forces, it was also successful. There was a Bosnian army and other forces that fiercely fought each other, altogether around almost 500,000 military. And this force size and orientation was totally at odds with the vision of peace. Therefore, slow reduction did take place. By 2004, Bosnian army and others, they reduced their forces to 12,000 regular soldiers. So from almost 500,000 to 12,000 and 250 reserves. So this is about negative definition of peace, absence of war. It was largely successful. However, these military missions also contributed to building of new institutions, such as common military force in Bosnia, single Ministry of Defense, and single chain of command. So their integration was also successful. Remember, when the Dayton Peace Agreement was signed, it left the country with Bosnian army and other forces that fought each other from 1992 to 1995. And now in 1995, they face each other in the peace building process. So as a result of these military missions, these forces have integrated themselves into a single defense structure. And remember, structure is about peace, and this was also successful. Okay, now I move on with my second part, which is about non-military missions. I just would like to check everything is okay. You hear me well? You see my slides?
Yes, Ambassador.
Okay, I move on. Now I speak more specifically about international non-military missions in Bosnia that contributed to peace building as well. Well, they have included diverse international and regional non-military missions with renewed operations and mandates to implement, I highlight now, civilian part of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Their mission was more related to the positive definition of peace, which is about attitudes and institutions and structures as well, that I mentioned earlier. So the most important non-military mission was the Office of the High Representative, OHR, which was created immediately after the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement. The purpose of this office was to interpret the agreement and oversee its civilian implementation. So it was not left to local parties to interpret what this article means or what that article means. It is Office of High Representative who was the final judge on this. So far, 7 high-ranking international political figures acted as high representatives of Bosnia. They were former prime ministers, foreign ministers, peace negotiators, or prominent diplomats. So this office is still active, and current High Representative Valentin Inzko, he actually declined his influential role and promoted more ownership in political processes in Bosnia and Herzegovina by domestic governments and local political parties. Okay, now I move on with other non-military missions that also contributed to peace building in Bosnia. So first of all, I will speak about UN missions. There were two components. One was United Nations International Police Task Force, UNIPTF, you can see on the slide, from 1995 to 2002, and UN Civil Affairs with the same time frame. So UNIPTF monitored law enforcement activities and facilities as well. It also advised and trained law enforcement personnel. On the other side, the UN Civil Affairs has a duty to support humanitarian relief, refugees, human rights, election, and economic transition at this phase of peace building process. Also important to mention, it's not on this slide, the UN also established the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICTY, you probably heard about, to prosecute serious violations of international humanitarian law committed during wars in former Yugoslavia, including Bosnia as well, with indirect effects on peace building, justice, and reconciliation. Again, reconciliation is a part of peace process. Finally, this peace building in Bosnia involved European-based organizations, so regional-based organizations, with distinct support programs and supervisions, such as the EU, European Union, or the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. The OSCE actually supervised first election rounds since 1997. This duty has been overtaken, however, by local institutions in 2004, as election law has been adopted in local parliament in Bosnia. However, the EU was the most important and still is the most important non-military mission, with diverse and different tasks and duties for peace building in Bosnia, including both military and non-military. So EUPM, European Union Police Mission, EU4, I already mentioned, a part of military mission, EUCR, European Union Special Representative, and finally EU Delegation. So these missions that were mandated by the EU were actually helping achieve progress in implementation of the Dayton Peace Agreement. However, more importantly, I would say, EU integration process of Bosnia also served as a strong incentive to change and reform a war-torn country to a fully functioning democracy with rule of law and functional market economy as well. Remember, these are the three criteria for the membership in the EU: functional democracy, functional market economy, and rule of law. And as Bosnia and Herzegovina was in this European integration process, the process was more important than the final outcome, which is the full membership. Throughout this process, Bosnia has fulfilled many different tasks and duties and reformed the country internally, so it has changed a lot. Now, let me be more specific of clear-cut outcomes, positive outcomes in Bosnia and Herzegovina as a result of these non-military missions. First to mention is reconstruction. You remember the country was hugely devastated and destroyed. So schools, roads, hospitals, houses have been reconstructed after the Dayton Peace Agreement. Just to illustrate, some 600 mosques were destroyed in territories controlled by Bosnian Serb forces. However, most of these mosques have been rebuilt already in Bosnia, just like 70, 80 of them left to be rebuilt, thanks to these non-military missions, thanks to donations from Muslim countries, including Malaysia and many other countries as well as international organizations. Second result was the freedom of movement across entity line, security of people, common identity cards. They were different in 1995. Few years later, they become common car plates, then increased bus lines, large markets near the inter-entity boundary so that the people can mix with each other. These were all successful stories in the post-Dayton phase. Then I can also mention respect of human rights, especially property rights. For example, land, apartments, tenancy rights that were taken away from their real owners during the wartime were effectively given back. Approximately 200,000 of abandoned homes had been returned to families that had fled the war, with direct and indirect effects on refugee return. Now you can compare the case of Bosnia with the case of Palestine, property issues in Bosnia and property issues in Palestine. All these properties, houses, tenancy rights have been given back to people who have fled the war, which was not the case in Palestine. Next result, freedom of expression. International non-military missions, they created a kind of independent media commission that actually sanctioned hate speech. They do not allow local media to actually have fake news, promote hate speech, but on the contrary, they wanted them to promote democracy, human rights, tolerance, reconciliation, and all that. And this has happened. Then next result is about democracy, about multi-party system, about elections. As I said, domestic institutions in Bosnia have overtaken election supervision from OSCE in 2004. Ever since then, smooth elections have been organized and smooth transition of power has been peaceful as well, which is a great result and achievement and important with regards to peace. Then I can also mention transitional justice, rule of law. I mentioned ICTY, but also we have a state court that has been established to prosecute war crimes and crimes against humanity, with again direct and indirect effects on reconciliation. On economy, well, Bosnia has reached pre-war economic development. By today, its GDP per capita reaches almost 13,000 US dollars using purchasing power measure. Its annual growth was around 3% before this pandemic appears. Last year, for example, Bosnia was the fastest growing travel destination in Europe, I would say. Tourism was the fastest growing industry, and so on and so forth. I can also mention institutional reforms. And again, I recall my definition of peace. It is about institutions. So reforms in Bosnia's key sector that were underway in the post-Dayton phase in judiciary, economy, border security, intelligence, just to name a few, soon resulted with new state institutions that guaranteed more peace, stability, and rule of law. In fact, 80 different state institutions have been established after the 1995. So these factors actually strengthened the weak state government that used to have only 3 ministries at the state level in 1995. At the time, after the Dayton Peace Agreement has been signed, and now it has a more functional cabinet of 9 ministries. So as a result of all these non-military missions, Bosnia has reformed its taxation policy, custom and trade, public broadcasting, judiciary, consumer protection, food security, intelligence, and so on and so forth. So this is all about institutions and structures, which is important for peace building process, as I said. Last but not the least, Bosnian authorities have also formally expressed common aspirations to join the EU as a full member and join the NATO Partnership for Peace in 2004. This reflects common vision for different parties involved in Bosnia. Just two more slides which also reflect the peace building process. This slide that you see now is Sarajevo Red Line. It is a memorial event, and this is 20th anniversary of the siege of Sarajevo. As you can see, 11,541 empty chairs. They symbolized the same number of victims of the war which were killed during the siege of Sarajevo. And then the next slide, this is memory, again, memory, culture of memory, victims of Srebrenica genocide. This memorial center was opened in 2003 by former American President Bill Clinton. Actually, in July next month, we will commemorate 25 years in Bosnia and Herzegovina of genocide that took place in this month. In conclusion of this part, I would say that together with military, these non-military missions truly reflected the successful, I would say successful, multidimensional approach of peace building in Bosnia. So the complex state structure, which was designed by the Dayton, has not only survived different challenges in last 25 years, but gradually adopted some positive changes as well. Well, not everybody might agree with this. There are some people who are less optimistic, and then they actually purely measure the success based on the positive definition of peace. So it is like the glass is half full or half empty. If we consider regular elections, transition of government, institutional building, freedom of movement, reconstructions, property return, reconciliation, we can conclude that it was largely successful. However, this story is not fully completed. We still have a small number of foreign troops. We still have Office of High Representative, and we are still on the way to join the EU. So now I basically move on to my final part, which is a bit shorter than the rest of it. It is about future perspectives of Bosnia. Where do we go from now? One of these perspectives is full membership in the EU. We actually applied for the full membership in 2015, and this has gradually becoming the most demanding external factor for Bosnia. So while most of other non-military missions, they closed their offices or they decreased their role in Bosnia, the EU institutions that I mentioned earlier, they have actually strengthened their presence. First of all, with contractual relations with Bosnia, we have a stabilization and association agreement signed with them, and we have new instruments from the EU side. So it seems that the EU is becoming the best possible exit strategy for the international community. It is also becoming the best possible option for remaining challenges in Bosnia. As we are moving to join the EU as a full member, and the day we join the EU, we will fulfill those three criteria, Copenhagen criteria, which is fully functional economy, rule of law, and democracy. And then this peace building story would be completely over and successful as well. And final slide regarding the future perspectives, it is about Euro-Atlantic integration. It is about membership in the NATO. Why this is important? This is important because of our collective security of the European continent, and collective security of the Southeast Europe, and also collective security within Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are already, as you can see, Bosnia with the yellow color, deep inside NATO structure, deep inside from eastern NATO borders, and it is a logical choice for us to join the NATO as well. With this, I will finish my lecture, this PowerPoint presentation, and I will now be available for all your questions. Actually, I look forward to all of them. And yeah, thank you for your attention. And now I'm available for your question.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Emir, for the brilliant sharing of the transformation of Bosnia from the war to what it is today. And now we're gonna show the pigeonhole where people have actually posted questions while you were presenting. So I see there are 8 questions altogether here, and the questions are all very good questions. So we need to address them. Right. So we'll just give it a minute for the questions to pop up.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Ambassador, you can also see the screen?
Okay, we can go one by one.
All right. First question, are there still any religious conflicts in Bosnia today?
So very short answer, no, not at all. No religious conflicts in Bosnia whatsoever.
All right. We move on to the next question, please. Okay. The question asks, how was the relation between Muslims community in Bosnia and other religion post-genocide nowadays?
Yeah. Well, as I said during my presentation, well, it was challenging time. It was more challenging in the immediate post-Dayton phase. For example, it was difficult for people to move around, to cross inter-entity line. For example, to visit their home. If they are refugees, in the immediate post-Dayton phase, they were not allowed, it was not safe, it was not secured to go where you represent minority. For example, it was difficult for Bosniaks to go to Republika Srpska, and it was maybe difficult for Serbs to come to Federation to see their home. So in this regard, it was a bit difficult, let's say maybe 1996, 1997, but as the time was passing, this freedom of movement was allowed. This was one clear result. Then I also mentioned the international community intentionally, they built some bazaars, some shopping centers, some marketplaces at these inter-entity lines. So these people of different religions and ethnicities can meet, can talk to each other, can actually have common business. And this is how business communities from different ethnicities also started to make some results. This is initial stage. Later on, it became completely normal for anybody from Republika Srpska to come to Federation and vice versa. And nowadays, I think communities are well integrated. There is complete freedom of movement. Well, in terms of politics, we sometimes face some challenges, debates, but this is like any other country. People are debating different policy issues, debating their constitution. In this regard, there might be some differences based on different ethnicity or different religious, but this is all in, I would say, in democratic environment, and it is fine, I would say.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. We'll move on to the next question. All right. Third question is asking, is there any school founded based on specific ethnic groups in Bosnia?
Yeah, this is one of the problems we have. We have, as I said, a very decentralized state. And when we speak about higher education or education in particular, it is also very decentralized. What does it mean in practice? It means that the state level, Bosnian level, I mean the level of the state, does not have any Ministry of Education or higher education. It is at the policy level of two entities. So in Republika Srpska, they have their own Ministry of Higher Education or Education. In Federation, it is even more decentralized into 10 different cantons. So each canton has its own Ministry of Education. Now you can conclude from my introduction to this question that each entity or each canton have their own education system. This is one segment of this. Another illustration is that we have like 2 schools under one roof, which means like the Croatian kids are having one program, Bosnian kids are having another program, and they are within the same roof. There are some schools, there are some other schools which are mixed, of course. This is mostly in those cantons which are mixed, more mixed than others. So yes, we do have these mixed schools, and we have different educational programs. However, international community was trying to impose on curriculums not to include any hate speech, not to include any bad history, not to include any bad promotion of anybody else. So in this regard, it was excluded from curriculums, even though those curriculums were a bit different from each other.
All right. Yeah. So it's quite a, yeah. I'll go to the question that asks about, all right. So he said, instead of halal field, can our field, specifically building maintenance management, be one or more lists to be considered by your government policy?
So what
from the School of Architecture and Building Environment.
So what's exactly the question? Can we replace halal field with
Right. Can our field, specifically building maintenance management, be one more list to be considered by your government policy?
What do you mean by building maintenance management? What does it mean?
He's saying instead of halal field, right? Right. So the question says, can our field, specifically building maintenance management?
Okay, and what do you mean our field? What is our field? Do you mean education or what?
I guess this guy is from the Faculty of Built Environment.
Okay, so I can say halal is just addition to anything else that we can have. It is nothing taking over anything else. So having a halal field does not prevent our government to develop any other policy. In fact, halal promotion is not run by the government itself. It is run by the private sector, by one bank, Bosnia Bank International, which is actually owned by the Islamic Development Bank. And they, together with the Islamic community of Bosnia, with sponsorship from the government, they do organize these exhibitions, halal exhibitions. But it does not prevent any other private sector or the government to have anything on construction, on architecture. And I'm sure there are fairs on architecture, because we have Faculty of Architecture in Sarajevo, which is part of the Sarajevo University. There are other faculties which are quite active, and they also have their fairs and seminars and events. And I'm sure they are working on this, what you call building maintenance management, even though I'm not that familiar with this concept. But I'm sure it can be added as well. It doesn't exclude. It can be inclusive.
All right. Yeah. I guess we'll let him know if for further clarification. I think Ambassador will be more than happy. Next question is, how is the political structure of Bosnia today?
Political structure, as I said, is very complex, very decentralized. We have different layers of the government. There is a state layer, and then there are two entities, and then the federation is divided into 10 cantons. I have mentioned this already, but what is important to highlight, at the state level, we have a collective presidency, three members, and they are rotating, 8 months rotation period. We also have the Council of Ministers, which is like the government of the Bosnia, with the chairman, with the prime minister, who is in charge of different policies at the state level. So, and then, as I said, we have two entities. One is centralized, another one is more decentralized. In conclusion, very short, Bosnia is very complex and very decentralized state, but somehow it was functioning well. It was, I would say, cost for peace, because everybody wanted to get something, and international community throughout peace negotiation allowed every ethnicity, every religious group, every constituent people in Bosnia to have something so that they can share the power. It was cost for the peace. It was, I think, good way, because evolution is better than revolution. So even though we have a complex state structure, it is much better than having misunderstanding and prolonged violence and conflict and all that.
All right. I'm looking at a question from Masters of MBA lecturer, maybe from the Ashayub Graduate Business School. It's asking if Bosnia is to enter into the EU, can they be competitive as the other EU countries in terms of economic?
Well, as you know, current members of the EU are not comparable with some other EU members. As you know, when there was the largest enlargement of the EU in 2004, with 10 countries from the Central and Eastern Europe, like the Slovenia, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and others, when they joined the EU, they were not comparable in terms of GDP with France, with Germany, with UK. There was a huge difference. But to be as rich as France or Germany or UK is not conditioned to join the EU. The main condition to join the EU is the rule of law, is democracy, parliamentary democracy, and is a functional market economy. As long as domestic business subjects can competitively play in the larger European market, any country is acceptable. So Bosnia would probably not be as developed as other more developed EU member countries like Germany, France, UK, Italy, Austria, but it would be like those Central and Eastern European countries, close to them at least, I would say. But since we are not joining yet, it will take some years. I believe by the time we are joining, we will have a stronger economy than $13,000 per capita.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. I think, how many more questions can you take? A couple more?
I can take as many as you like.
All right. Okay. As long as our audience will be patient. All right. So, Your Excellency, the next question is, what is your vision? What is your vision? Someone moved that question already. You know, can we move the screen again? What is your vision? Oh dear. All right. All right. Never mind. All right. I'll come back to that question. How Malaysia helped Bosnia in 1994, 1995? I mean, people are still asking about the role of Malaysia. Yeah.
Yeah, the role of Malaysia was great. We are very thankful. We are grateful to Malaysian government and Malaysian people and the leadership for continuous support to Bosnian people during the war, and then immediately after the war, and then all the way till 2020. Well, during the war, there was a Malbat force present in Konjic, one of the towns south from Sarajevo. So they were present, they were very supportive. There was also strong political leadership, with whom Dr. Mahathir Mohamad as Prime Minister then was very supportive of the Bosnian cause. And then after the war, I would say Malaysia just continued to help as well. I will mention two examples. The first foreign bank that was opened in Bosnia in the post-Dayton phase was Malaysian International Commercial Bank, ICB Bank. Unfortunately, this bank has been closed, I think, in 2001, because maybe when the bank came in 1996, 1997, we as a market were not ready for foreign banks. We did not have adequate legislation, institutional setup. It was too early for us. And then no foreign banks were present then. But then as Malaysian ICB bank left Bosnia, other foreign banks came like Raiffeisen, Unicredit and all them. But it was the right time for them, and now they are very successful and profitable. Second example is Malaysia also rebuild bridges, build mosque. There was a first condo built in Bosnia as a result of Malaysian finance. And there were different projects with refugees, with infrastructure, with many other areas in Bosnia. And again, I can say we are just very grateful and very thankful, and we can never forget what Malaysian government did for Bosnia throughout this time.
All right, thank you, Ambassador. All right, can we look at the few more, maybe a couple more. All right. Okay, there was a question in terms of, Your Excellency, what is your vision of hope for Bosnian people in few years, especially for the young Sarajevans?
Well, my vision is that we move on with our European and Euro-Atlantic integration. As we move on with these two integrations, we are internally changing a lot. It provides better perspective for young people as well. And it will provide them some better opportunities than they have now. Because we are still not a member of the EU, we are not able to utilize many good options in terms of technical support from the EU that is available for member states. And even when we are candidate country officially, we will have some funds available, more than we are having now. And in this regard, young people will be able to utilize those funds as well. So my vision is that we move on in these two integrations, and hopefully in 5 to 10 years time, if not sooner, we join both of these integrations, and then I would say this story will be closed as a post-building story. We will be able then to discuss some other challenges like any other country is discussing nowadays.
Yes. All right. I'll allow for 2 more questions, and then we'll try to wrap up everything.
Okay.
Okay. Now, all right. Is there any opportunity for Malaysians to attach themselves to Bosnia in the field of teaching and learning for a short term, for example, 1 to 3 months? So we're looking at academics here.
Yeah, well, actually, I think the best option is for student exchange programs. I think a number of universities in Malaysia, including UiTM, signed MOUs providing this opportunity for students, academics, and administrative personnel. So in this regard, it would be important to move on from having these MOUs and agreements to some maybe practical terms to actually provide and do exchange as well. Bosnian students actually go abroad a lot. There are available programs from the EU like Erasmus and Mundos, and they exchange a lot. So they go for 1, 2, 3 months abroad. And I think it would be also very good for Malaysians to come to Bosnia to stay in different universities. Some of them offer courses in English language, some of them quite prominent. They can learn a lot. And especially those students who, like those master students or PhD students who are studying like peace studies, like international law, like international relations. They have so many witnesses of genocide, for example. They can do interviews, they can do field studies. They have so many data and documents available, so much archives which are related to not only war, but in the post-war as well. So those, serious PhDs can be produced based on Bosnian case, post-building, post-recovery, genocide studies, peace studies. There are different topics that can be explored. And I invite master and PhD students from Malaysia to come to Bosnia to explore these opportunities, these academic opportunities. And I'm sure they will find a good environment, which is diverse, which is it is Muslim friendly, but it is also in the Europe, in the heart of Europe. So it would be interesting experience, both academically and socially.
Right. Yes. In fact, we can start with the 3 universities as mentioned by our Vice Chancellor earlier, that we have signed MOUs. So of course, what Ambassador has actually said. So the doors are actually wide open. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So perhaps one last question here. I know, Ambassador, there are a lot of questions today. Very enlightening lecture today. Maybe we'll have a part 2 from you, Right. Okay. Let's pause there and I'll choose a question. All right.
Okay.
What is the current younger generation's perspective regarding the conflict? do they harbor animosity or resentment towards Serbia or Croatia, or are they more prone to strengthening?
Well, it is a tough question. It is a difficult question. A young generation today in Bosnia, most of them, they don't remember war. They have not experienced war. So what they know about war, it is what their parents are telling them. It is what they watch on TV, what they read in the newspaper, what books they read. Like anywhere, we have youth which is more progressive, more tolerant, more understanding, willing to mix, willing to move forward, to put this behind. At the same time, there are some extreme groups which actually still promote violence from time to time. And then in this regard, it is very important to have a powerful rule of law so that the state intervenes whenever there is a drastic violation of anybody's rights in Bosnia. So these things, yes, do happen. There are some groups that from time to time have some slogans that provoke others, but there are also some progressive young kids who are promoting diversity, promoting peace, promoting reconciliation. And those from Banja Luka come to Sarajevo. Some other from Sarajevo will go to Mostar. Those from Mostar will go to Banja Luka. So these things, it will take time.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, all right. This is a very last question. After that, I want to alert all the audience to be looking at the camera. We'll take a group photo. So one last question. All right. So the question is, all right. The question, I take a very simple question from this person here. Is there anywhere or any ways UITM can help Bosnia and Herzegovina in the future?
Well, thank you very much for this last question. UITM is a great university. It's one of, I think, the oldest in Malaysia, the largest in Malaysia. Yeah. We can benefit a lot. You have such a huge experience, historical experience. You have many students, many academics, many faculties, campuses all over the Malaysia. So I actually recognized the UITM at early stage of my mission. I wanted to engage, and I did manage to have a couple of meetings with the leadership of your university. And then I'm very happy that some of these initiatives have been realized by current Vice Chancellor, Dr. Kasim. I'm very much thankful to him for organizing the mission, successful mission of UITM to Bosnia, which visited 3 universities, signed these MOUs. This is just, I believe, a beginning. It can go on, it can move on. And the best way to help Bosnia is actually to implement those MOUs that you have discussed and agreed upon in Bosnia. If you have Bosnian professors at UITM, and if your professors are also available at Bosnian universities, and students as well, with exchange of students and administrative personnel, that would be the best help we could get from UITM. And if I speak more specifically, I believe your experience in tourism, nowadays tourism is, because of this pandemic, it's low profile. Hotels are closed and foreign people are not traveling. But in the near future, it will be again normal. But you have a huge experience in tourism. You have faculties, you have students who have their internships, their practical training in hotels, restaurants. Such a concept is needed in Bosnia. We need also good faculties in this regard. We need good curriculums, good practical trainings. In this regard, I believe some of our future professors in tourism will be able to have some training at UITM. Or maybe some of your faculties will be in position to visit Bosnia and maybe establish a tourism faculty in the future, and maybe some share the knowledge and experience. That would be the most valuable benefit we can get from you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador. So that was the last question, as I mentioned earlier. for a very superb sharing session this afternoon. Very enlightening and very insightful, and there's a lot of questions, good questions that were brought up, and I'm sure a lot of our students studying international law and policy studies, so they are actually here in this group. So we have close to about 450 audience. And I would like to remind the participants, please do us a favor, please fill in the feedback form as we are trying to finish up. So, so once again, with the virtual clap for Ambassador Emir. Dr. Emir, thank you very much, and we hope to see you again soon. So as a token of our appreciation, there's going to be a group photo of everyone here. So do stand by, look at the camera.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll wait for our technical team then.
Okay, thank you very much again for this opportunity. I was really honored. It was a great honor for me to give this lecture at UITM. And I am sure that our mutual collaboration between two countries, between two academic communities will continue.
Right. And perhaps maybe last few words, Dato?
Oh, thank you very much to Dr. Amir for the enlightening speech, and certainly we hope the our university staff and students be able to have a meaningful collaboration with the universities in Bosnia.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's get ready for the one last token of appreciation here, which is a group photo, so we get to see everyone. Okay. All right. I'm just asking them to cue us if they're ready. So, Ambassador, you are taking the picture. We're waiting for everybody to be in the. Yeah.
Okay, you see my photo as well, do you?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Amir from University, International Islamic University. Yeah. The Director for International Office. Yeah. All right.
Okay, very good.
All right. And we can get a few more, or is this it? Okay. All right. Everyone just smile.
Okay, smile.
So you can put your thumbs up. It can be, yeah.
Hey. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Please share the photo with me.
We will, Ambassador. Thank you very much. So thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.